Hello, my name is Simon Cade. Um, Thank you very much for coming to this Q&A. I've had a little bit of a crazy morning with transport, so I feel a little bit frazzled coming up from Brighton this morning. Did you guys all have the Northern Line stuff being? Yeah. But we made it. We're here, so that's good. Today I wanted to talk about a little bit of my work that I've been able to do over the last few years, and mostly focused around YouTube and all of the fun that I've had more recently making independent documentaries. And so, as a little introduction to me, at the moment my day job is making YouTube videos on my YouTube channel DSLR Guide. And so I work with brands like Hollyland that have brought me here today, and we make YouTube videos where I basically share whatever I've learned about filmmaking, and on the side I also make documentaries, which is what a lot of this kit that I'm going to be getting into a bit later on is about. But just to go back to the very beginning, 2010 is when I first got into filmmaking, and we did a little school project where we were assigned to make a film, and then I basically just completely fell in love with filmmaking and started making very silly action films. This one was with my little brother, and then I started learning visual effects, and I was basically just absolutely obsessed with cameras and filmmaking while making these usually very violent films, but just had so much fun. Like, me and my friends would go around recreating video game scenes and just having way too much fun making little movies and learning loads along the way. And I think I was 14, 15 years old at this point, but taking it very, very seriously. And those last couple of films there were shot on this camcorder here, because I was really passionate, believing that audio is more important. So I saved up and first got myself a microphone before I upgraded from this 480p standard definition camera. But eventually I did save up to get a Canon 600D, which I just checked recently how cheap they are on eBay, and that just makes me so happy to see that a camera as good as this can now be so affordable. But at the time, I really believed that when I got this camera, because I saved up for a whole year, I was doing newspaper delivery jobs, and I saved up for over a year to be able to buy this. And I really believed that when I got this camera, that my whole, my films were going to go from here to expert level. I really thought that once I get that blurry background, I was so confident that that's all I needed, because I already had the skills, obviously. So all I needed was this camera, and then I thought that everything was going to be completely fixed. So I got the camera, and that's when I started my YouTube channel, because I actually waited until the camera arrived before. I remember the last few projects, I was like, you know what, I don't want to make anything until I get this new camera. And those two things of the pressure that I put onto having that camera, combined with the fact that I actually stopped creating things for a while, those things really resonate with me. I look back on that now and I think I never want to stop making something because I don't have the equipment. And I also don't want to put so much pressure onto the equipment to expect it to improve my films. Because sure enough, I quickly found out that actually just because you've got a blurry background doesn't mean that your films are actually amazing. So the high stakes that I had for it didn't quite live up to that. But I persevered making my YouTube videos. This is some of the first 2 years of making a video every single week. And I was basically, you can see there, estimated revenue, 0. And I think I had 5,000 subscribers. But I was so committed and having so much fun just kind of sharing what I'd been learning, and sharing mostly at that point, geeking out about equipment, because that was the one thing I was an expert in, was how to get cheap and affordable equipment. So I basically just shared whatever I'd been learning about, which would be, which lens should you buy if you've only got 50 quid to spend? Or what's the best camera package if you've got £1,000 to spend? Because that was the one topic that I had researched very, very thoroughly. But really, I was just having fun. Like, I was such a geek. I was so enthusiastic about this stuff that it was really easy to be able to talk about it. And over those 2 years, I kind of developed while also making little event videos. This was the first one I did, a little carnival that I shot. And then the nice thing about making a video every week is it kind of forces you to improve, even if you're not really trying. And so you can see here that, like, the lighting, for example, this was natural lighting. And then a year later, when I'd learned a bit about lighting and put a bit more effort into the lighting, we had this look. And the difference there, this is the same camera, exactly the same lens. Seeing that difference really made me think, wow, like, the camera is not that important here. It really is all about what's in front of the camera. And so I suddenly realized, like, my videos shouldn't be referencing equipment. I shouldn't be talking about equipment too much. I want to talk about how to actually make good stuff. And so I've talked a lot about lighting and basically just followed through as I was learning and improving my projects. This is a still from a short film that I did. I was just sharing everything that I learned as I learned it, and gradually moving away from caring about the equipment and into focusing on storytelling. So this was one little short film I did as a challenge of, after realizing I'm feeling a bit bitter about the high expectations I had for my DSLR to make me an expert filmmaker. I then said, like, you know what, let's go back to that camcorder that I used to use when I was a kid. Let's make a short film with that and try and see if I can use these new skills I've learned about lighting to actually tell a story, and see if we can make a decent film with the cheapest equipment. And so this film we had, like, I've purposely used the cheapest microphone, and that's like a painter's pole that I literally duct taped the microphone to. And then it was so fun to be able to, like, challenge myself to use the least expensive equipment, and of course filming behind the scenes. That also gave me a whole YouTube video to say, like, this one was called, how to film with cheap equipment. And so I kind of found this passion and this niche for making films without using the latest and greatest equipment. And essentially that's what I've been doing ever since. So I've been able to do some really fun projects, like going to Germany to film Formula One, not Formula One, a different kind of racing that I can't remember what it's called. But we went to the Nürburgring and got to go in a helicopter on that trip. And this was all stemming from, like, just making YouTube videos. 2 years where I didn't make any money from it, and then it gradually increased and the audience grew, and it became my full-time job a few years later. And so I really love YouTube and the opportunities it gives for someone to just think, like, what do I care about? What do I want to share with the world? Whether it's educational or even just, like, passion and enthusiasm for climbing. A lot of people do, like, outdoorsy stuff, and they just love climbing, so they make videos about climbing, and then suddenly they're a professional climbing YouTuber. And for me, it was filmmaking. And I've even been able to meet some amazing friends. This was at a Hollyland event in Amsterdam, and it's been so fun to be able to, like, connect with people and have these cool opportunities that all stem from just this idea of creating a YouTube channel where you share what your passions are, and then consistently doing that over time while you build the audience. So the latest one was really fun. We got to go to China with Hollyland. This is me using some of their kit. They basically booked out this incredible film set that's a replica of a really important historic Chinese kind of area. And we made a little film all together and used some of the Hollyland kit here. I'm wearing the solid comm, so we were all talking to each other and feeling like we were on a full-size set, even though most of us were, like, YouTubers and more of, like, Instagram people. But we got the chance to kind of play on a literal, like, sound stage where they've shot really, really big movies. And again, all of this comes from just having a YouTube channel. I think there must be so many really, like, talented filmmakers out there who don't get some of the opportunities that I have because of the benefits of sharing what you are doing. And so I really encourage anyone I meet to be like, just post some behind the scenes on Instagram. Post, like, if you're already filming something, it can be as little as making a little TikTok on your phone, but just sharing what you're doing can open so many opportunities, even if you don't go as heavily into it as I did, making a video every week. But the idea of like networking, where you, rather than going out and approaching people, you just do your cool projects, but be brave enough to put yourself out there, which is, it can be scary to kind of put yourself out there and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. But it really does bring a lot of opportunities, I think. So these days, I'm mostly doing videos like these kind of topics. I don't know if that's big enough you can read it, but I'm focusing on building unique kind of rigs for specific filming situations. And so I did one for a cycling rig, and recently I did a basketball project where I was on roller skates. So I built a little monitor that was attached to my face. And again, I've been doing this YouTube stuff for 10 years, but the latest thing is just thinking like, what am I having fun with? And that is, at the moment, tinkering around to build a piece of equipment, not to improve my films necessarily, or to give like higher resolution images or better performance in low light, but to be able to allow me to actually film something that I wouldn't otherwise be able to film. And so that's what my videos are about, is following that kind of passion. And so the channel has kind of developed over time from those very early days of talking about equipment, to then later talking about lighting, and after that a bit more I did quite a lot of kind of analyzing films and talking about the emotional process of being a creative person. But at the moment, that stuff, I lost interest in that, so I'm almost exclusively talking about these projects where I get to build something and tinker with almost like inventing a product, but using off-the-shelf components. And it's been so much fun to be able to like just follow that. And I think that's the number one thing I always try and remind myself with YouTube, is that I actually have an incentive to follow my interests. And I think anyone who is sharing something, maybe you could say that's true with creative work in general, that we have an incentive to kind of listen to our interests and make things, whether it's writing a song or writing a film. But YouTube, it feels especially relevant there, because I've seen a number of times when I try to make a YouTube video that I think someone else will like, but I'm not that excited about it. And then you have this terrible thing, if I make a video for someone else and then they don't like it, then that's a lose-lose. So I've decided that I have to just trust that if I make what I want to make, then even if no one else enjoys it, at least I know that I had a good time. But more often than not, from doing this for 10 years, I've noticed that actually the times when I can tune into what I want to make, it often actually other people enjoy it more anyway. So that's what I keep trying to come back to when I'm tempted to kind of focus on what other people are doing and say, oh, maybe I should copy them, or maybe I should do what worked well for me a couple of years ago. I always come back to thinking like, what am I interested in? Which sounds a bit kind of self-centered, and that there is an element of that to YouTube, I think. But being like truthful about and tuning in to what you want to do, I think is a really, really powerful thing. And so that's what I keep trying to orient myself back to these days. So this was the latest project. So much fun to just goof around, roller skating around. We were filming basketball, and I had this crazy contraption on my forehead so that I could see the camera's display. So that's a little bit of, I call this my day job, is taking the audience behind the scenes on any projects that I'm working on, whether it's short films, documentaries. This still, the one thing about trusting what you want to do is the internet is very unpredictable. And I thought this image here would be a brilliant thumbnail, because it's me with a camera out on the water, and I thought people would find it really intriguing to see whether I was going to drop my camera in the water, because it wasn't a waterproof camera. And I thought that would be a really evocative, emotional image. But for some reason, I posted that video and people really weren't very interested in it. And so that's something I've seen time and time again, is that the things that I think are going to be popular or resonate with people, it really is just, it's almost random. And so that's the beauty of just doing what you want to do and just taking another swing. So it was a bit disheartening because I had quite high expectations for that video. I thought, like, I'm really onto something here. And then even, 10 years in of experience and practice and making hundreds of videos, I still got it really, I was really wrong to assume that it was going to do well. But you just have to brush yourself off and try again. So documentaries. In a way, I've started thinking of my YouTube channel as documentaries now, because it is non-fiction, and I'm trying to do a bit more of storytelling rather than just trying to do educational content. But I've learned most from producing these documentaries with Josh from Ordinary Things. So we did this 90-minute documentary, and I've got some stills from it. We got to meet this guy. So I produced this documentary, so I shot it, and it's just the two of us, me and Josh. So we have this really compact team where it's me, and I've actually brought all the equipment because I have one backpack on my front, one on my back, and then the tripod bag goes over my shoulder so that I can still have my other phone available to go through to show my train tickets and stuff. And that tripod bag has 2 tripods in it, so I'm able to do 2 interview setups, all as a solo shooter. And that's the kind of equipment I get excited about now. It's not again, going ProRes RAW, 8K. I'm excited about the fact that it's so small and compact that I can actually, we can tell these stories in a way that would not be possible just financially, because it is, these documentaries are entirely independent, and they just go on YouTube with no production company support, no television. It's just a 90-minute documentary that we share directly with the audience, which is really exciting, but it means we have to get creative. So we got to meet this guy who is starting it's like a version of the Olympics, but where they don't do drug testing. So we were asking him about his very kind of shady sounding business plan, where they use the pharmaceutical industry to advertise these enhancements of steroids and stuff that people are going to use in the Olympics. And it was fascinating to be able to hear what sounded like quite an evil business plan, to be honest, to get to the cutting edge of what humans are able to do. We also got to go to Switzerland to meet with some investors who were working on the cutting edge of the longevity movement of people trying to live forever. So that's Josh there on the right, and we basically were trying to find out what is the latest in technology to live forever. And again, you'll notice the way that I speak about these projects is all about the people that we met and the kind of the things that those people are trying to do. Suddenly, it doesn't seem so relevant, the fact that the lighting here isn't brilliant. I could say that it feels a bit silhouetted, and it would be nice if we'd been able to set up a big light. But really, I'm just so much more interested in what these people are saying these days than what the image looks like. And Josh has helped me actually to see that, because he's not from a filmmaking background. He's from a very YouTube background where he's all entirely focused on content rather than production value. And so I've learned that from him, I think, along with my own beliefs that sound quality matters and storytelling matters way more than anything else. So for me as producer, a lot of what I was doing was trying to figure out how can we get to into Davos, Switzerland during the World Economic Forum, when the hotel rooms were costing £20,000 a night. So we obviously couldn't do that. So we ended up staying in Geneva and then driving down to film in the day, and then so that we could only have one night actually in this really expensive area of Davos, but we ended up paying hundreds of euros for literally for a bunk bed. It's the most expensive bunk bed I've ever slept in, but that was all part of our creative problem solving to be able to avoid these genuinely, like the cheapest hotel was £20,000. It was absolutely insane. So that was fun for me to be able to put on my producer hat and think, like, how we know we can't stay in this hotel, what are the alternate options? And then the highlight of this project was meeting Brian Johnson, the guy on the right there, who is a very wealthy guy who's investing in biotech and trying to extend his life for as long as possible. And so the interview set up here was basically based around, again, because I'm setting up myself, I arrived an hour early and I used a wireless transmission so that I could basically see one of the camera angles, and then I was sitting in the chair with the monitor so that I could see if the framing and lighting was looking good. And then during the interview, you can see there I've got the, I can see both monitors at the same time because I'm using the Hollyland wireless transmission system. But it basically meant that I could operate two cameras at the same time, which is obviously not ideal. If anything had gone wrong with the focus, I would have had to like move between the two. But using the wireless transmission, I was able to basically do a good enough job to keep an eye on both things, even though it was not ideal. And I was running sound myself as well. So we've got the Hollyland Lark Max there, which is giving so that each of them have a microphone, and it's going all into one mic input. And so that kind of really simple setup enabled us to do this really fast interview when we only had 3 hours with him, and I arrived an hour early to set up, and then we were like rushing around a house tour and able to sit down with him. And this interview, I was really happy with the results in terms of like, again, lighting and composition wise, I could have some things to say about how it could be improved. Is it like Netflix quality? No, I don't think it really is. But I was really happy with the questions that we were able to ask him. I asked him, trying to find out basically like, why would someone try and live forever? Why would someone make so many sacrifices to their life so that they can have optimum health? And I think in that documentary we did manage to answer that question, and I'm so much more excited about that than I am the fact that it didn't quite look like a Netflix documentary. And in terms of the kind of money that we spent on that project, we obviously had to spend money to travel to America, but the best return on investment, I think, was Josh's idea to buy these donuts. So this is our contributor here, Brian. He eats the most regimented diet for the sake of his health. He eats exactly the same thing every day, totally vegan, no treats, no cheat days. And so Josh had the idea that we could buy some donuts and offer them to him. And that simple thing of spending $10 on some donuts that were like covered in bacon bits, they were the most like obscenely American donuts. But that, I think, had such a good return on investment in terms of like elevating that project. It literally took a couple of minutes and a couple of bucks to add that element, but it gave him something to talk about. I think his reaction when he saw the donuts was he said they should be illegal, and he compared them to heroin. So it was just like, it worked so nicely, and that's like makes me so excited to see that you can spend such a small amount of money and like impact the film. And it was similar. We did a later project that's just come out last week actually about the UK, and we got to meet this guy who's a 19-year-old prime minister of a country that he created. And so again, thinking of like, how can you elevate that without spending much money? Well, we asked him to bring a flag, and we asked him to wear a suit for the interview. And those tiny little things, those ones we didn't even have to pay for those. He had them already. But just having the foresight to ask for that, I think, enabled us to get this shot where he looks like, I love this shot, and it's such a nice representation of his character, because he's this 19-year-old prime minister who's literally got like acne on his face, but he also speaks like a politician. So he has this really like diplomatic way of speaking, and it was so fun to get to meet him and hear about his country that he's founded with a bunch of people from Croatia. They've basically claimed a little bit of land, and they actually went to visit it and settled there for like 24 hours before the Croatian police showed up and kicked them off and said they were a national security risk. So just like absolutely fascinating individual. I was so excited to be able to meet him. And all of this is just from, like, we met this guy on Twitter and sent him a message asking if he wants to meet up and if we could interview him. And he's like, yeah, sure. Like, and then suddenly here I am, you know, packing up a kit with some very basic equipment, and we go and meet him, and a couple months later that documentary comes out, and it's like, it's such a cool job to be able to do. And I was thinking actually in terms of like, if you did want to make a documentary on an even lower budget, there's some really good options out there for like really compact, cheap equipment. And for example here, if I was going to make a documentary completely by myself, I would use my phone, and then this little tripod mount thing could allow me to interview someone. I could set this up on a table or something, and then I could use a little microphone like this, so I could have one on me here and give the person I'm interviewing another one, and then this literally just connects to my phone. And now here, in like, as quick as it is to set that up while trying to do a talk, you can basically have a pretty legitimate setup as easily as that. And I think like you could make some really good documentaries with a setup as simple as this. And then I would even, if you need to shoot outdoors, you can take it one step further and put a little ND filter on the phone. This is something that I made DIY following a different YouTube tutorial, where you can actually, you can kind of like super glue a really basic MagSafe thing to a step-up ring, and now I can use my regular ND filters from my camera on my phone. And so this is a setup I use all the time because it's just so compact. And like this is a movie-making machine right here. Like, you've got sound, you've got ND filters, you've got a very good camera. Like, it's so exciting that you can just go out and genuinely make something. And a good number of the shots in this documentary that we made have actually been shot on my phone. Let me see if I can find some of the stills. So this was on the big camera, but that was shot on my phone using this same wireless setup, where I've got, this time that the phone was over here and connected with a HDMI to wireless transmit, and then that was the bigger camera. And I think they cut together pretty well. And there's also natural light as well. So it was getting a bit dark. It wasn't ideal situation by any means. But for me, it's good enough to be able to use a phone. And the fact that I could do all of this without an assistant, without having anyone else around, really opened up some kind of creative opportunities. So yeah, this was the big camera, but this was the phone. Because we were, the whole project's about immigration and about how people feel, whether people feel patriotic, whether they feel proud to be British. And so the second we arrived, this taxi driver starts spouting off about immigration and he was being pretty racist and pretty horrible. So I pull out my phone, and I'm pretty happy with the reaction with the look of that shot. And it actually made it into like the very first 60 seconds of the documentary. If I'd been fumbling around with my backpack to get out the big camera, or if I'd believed that like, oh, this, my phone isn't good enough to use, then I would have completely missed that moment. That turned out to be quite an important little moment in the documentary. And that is so exciting to me, that like phones are genuinely like, a lot of people talk about how like, oh, we're so lucky these days with technology, but then they use really big, expensive cameras anyway. And I've always felt like I believe that the phones and cheaper cameras are powerful, and so I actually use them almost like on purpose to try and make a point. So yeah, that was a really, really fun project. And again, like Josh's YouTube channel is what funds this. He puts a little sponsorship slot in these documentaries, and then that pays for me to come on and shoot for a couple of days. We do like kind of 4 or 5 day shoots for these ones, and then he edits them himself, and I come in as the producer to watch the edits and give a bit of feedback. And then we have a composer, a freelance composer who does some of the music, and this last time around we had someone come in for 1 day to do a little sound mix. But with that such a small team, like it is actually financially sustainable to make a documentary, and it feels so exciting to be able to do this without anyone telling us who we need to talk to, without waiting for any funding applications, and needing to. We don't even have to do networking to like meet people from production companies and stuff. Like we can literally just be like, what kind of story do we want to tell? Who do we want to meet? And the only networking we have to do is to actually meet the contributors. So it feels so freeing and so exciting to be able to work on these projects and tell these stories. And like this was, as part of that project with the UK, we got to meet this guy who owns a prison. And it was just absolutely like the most wild day of like, felt like such a once in a lifetime experience to be able to go around and like sit in his crazy lair where he's got all the CCTV around his compound, and then he like literally bounces on the safety nets and posts it on his Instagram, this really rich guy who owns a prison and rents it out to movie studios. And then he took us down into the tunnels, and this whole time I'm just filming with the camera, just being like what is my life? This is so exciting to be able to get a tour around this place. And the fact that this is my job, I just felt like so grateful and so happy, and really like kind of tuned in and connected into the flow state, because it was like a 2-hour interview where we didn't really know what was about to happen, and I was just there with my camera trying to guess whether, like, if he points at something, do I stay on him, or do I get Josh's reaction, or do I point the camera at what he's pointing at? And it got to the point after like 45 minutes in where I was barely thinking anymore. I was just like fully going off instinct, and it was such a nice feeling to have that like creative flow state. So just such a cool project. I'm just so happy to be part of it. Let me have a quick look at my notes real quick. Oh yeah, and cool thing about documentaries is I'd set up this same setup with the 2 wireless cameras ahead of time so that we were ready to do the sit-down interview to talk to him. But then they ended up just lying down on the safety nets, and kind of there was like a moment where Josh kind of looked at me and was like, maybe we can just stay, maybe we'll just do the interview here. And we ended up not using my little setup at all, because it worked so nicely for them to be able to have this like 45-minute interview while lying down looking up at a prison. And so that's the thing I love about documentaries, is like you make your best plans, but then sometimes it works out even better. And I think the kind of the wackiness of that look in that shot of them lying down, and there was one angle where I was like the kind of the position that I was in meant that I could almost like hardly see his face, and he was kind of like, his crotch was facing towards me, and it was just like a really weird camera angle that actually worked really well for this guy who was being a bit who's coming across very out of touch, and it was quite an absurd interview because his life is so different from a normal person, while he lives up looking down on the rest of the town with a literal moat around him. And so that shot of him lying down on the nets just like really suited the project and worked out really well. And so yeah, it's just I just really love it, being able to like go with the flow and tell the stories in a really organic way, but still having the safe backup of the 2-camera interview set up just in case. So yeah, that's a little bit of what I've been up to lately, and how much fun I've been having doing independent documentaries. And if you'd like to follow what I've been up to, or actually reach out to me, because Instagram is the best place to get in touch if you'd like to work together, or just chat about what your projects are. And then my YouTube channel is DSLR Guide. That's where I do at the moment, mostly kind of equipment videos where I'm building random rigs for random situations. And the documentaries are on Ordinary Things. That's the other YouTube channel. If you search up Ordinary Things, you can see the 2 documentaries featuring all of those really wacky individuals. So I think we're going to have a little bit of time for a Q&A if anyone has any questions. Is there a microphone to send around for questions?
Hi there.
Hello.
When you're on location on your own and you have to film yourself, is there any kit set up that you have to sort of track yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I would either use something like this and just go for a wide shot in the corner of a room or something, which, yeah, that works decently well if it's a wide enough shot. Or I've also done situations where I just set up a GoPro either on my head, filming my point of view, or I've even had it attached to the camera and on a magic arm, so the camera is so that, yeah, wherever I go, the GoPro can be filming my face if I'm filming for behind the scenes. So yeah, GoPros and phones would be my go-to if I don't have someone else with me to film behind the scenes. Any other questions at all?
You showed us a graph of your earnings when you started off. What happened afterwards? How high does the graph go?
Fair question. So the YouTube channel, let's see, I think at the moment we're on about 40 million views in total. So it was a nice exponential increase to start with for the first few years. And then my best year in terms of views was actually 2017. So the graph kind of looks like this, and then it goes down, down, down ever since. So that's been a nice experience for my ego to get used to the fact that somehow exponential, it doesn't last forever. At the time, it felt like I was just be like, every month will be better than last month. This is the best thing ever. But yeah, 2017 was the peak, and I think the majority of the views happened before kind of 2018, but I'm still going and still making it work with essentially just doing more advertising on the YouTube channel nowadays. That there's fewer viewers to keep it financially sustainable. But yeah, so it's 40 million views and 900 and something thousand subscribers. But these days, I'm happy if my video gets 60,000 views, 70,000 views. That's a very good day for me. But a lot of the videos get 10,000, 20,000 views. So that's the kind of where we're at these days in terms of the audience. But yeah, it's very volatile, very difficult to predict. And but the most fun bit was those first couple of years when I was just like growing consistently, and I was able to tell myself that like, oh, I'm not doing this for the validation of views. I'm just doing this for fun and to share what I'm learning. And then it was when I actually had when that feeling of exponential growth went away, that was when I suddenly realized like, oh, actually, I do miss that. And I think maybe I was getting something from that validation of like seeing the progress go up, because you get all the statistics. It's so easy to focus on it too much. But these days, yeah, I try and just tune into what I'm making and try not to worry too much about those stats, even though it does obviously have a big impact on my business and my paying my bills or not. Sorry, what's that?
How much do you make?
How much money? It's so variable, but yeah, and I don't think I'd feel comfortable going into like specific numbers, but it's been my full-time living since after those 2 years. I think it took me 3 or 4 years for it to be my full-time living, and then yeah, it's been very up and down ever since, but and very variable depending on how much I work and how the advertising industry is doing. But yeah, I've been able to survive with it as my day job essentially. Yeah, yeah. That's what I'd say. Sorry that I can't get into more specifics. Maybe if you want to talk one-on-one, I could get into it a little bit more. But I'll be in the Hollyland booth later, by the way, if anyone wants to have a chat. Hi.
Just a question. How long did it take to become monetizable on YouTube?
Let's see. Yeah, I always say that it was 2 years before I made any money, but I think there was little trickles coming in towards the end of that 2 years. So I want to say probably like 18 months before I started getting like £10 a month, £20 a month, which was very exciting and it felt really good. But also looking back on that now and thinking, if I had to start from scratch again, would I be able to do 2 years of just completely volunteering? That's why it's so important to find something that you enjoy, because it's a long time and a lot of work, particularly weekly videos. Like, I don't do weekly videos anymore. I do them much less frequently. It's a real slog, and some people find their audience much faster, and some people it takes much longer. So the unpredictableness of it as well really is quite substantial. But going for a niche, the nice thing, if you are in a niche, it's not as difficult to. You don't need as large of an audience if you are in a niche. So I often recommend to people that pick something really, really specific, because then you don't need to get to such high heights in terms of the audience, because you can basically do more selective advertising, because the advertisers know that your audience have certain interests. They're willing to pay a bit more of a premium per 1,000 viewers. So that's part of the business model, I think, is to be really hyper-focused on a specific niche. Then you don't have to have such a large audience. Good. Cool. That's all we got time for, but thanks so much for listening and giving me a chance to rave about how much I enjoy my work. And really appreciate you guys coming out. Thanks so much.